Is there a chill in the air by you? Because there is for me, which means it is time for a fall cookie set. Now, I don't know about your neck of the woods, but fall for me means colored leaves up in New England, leaf piles, pumpkins, warm candles, finally getting cozy. And so I wanted this cookie set to be a reminder of all of those things. So this month, we're actually going to be playing around with cutting our piping bags a little bit differently so we can do something fun and making a leaf pile, or as my husband thought it was, a gummy bear pile, but I'm not seeing that. We're also going to be playing around with some three-dimensional cookies. Whether you feel like it works or not, we're making candles. And this was I will say this was a little difficult when it came to using a circular cutter. And then lastly, whether you're big into Halloween or whether it's just fall, it is pumpkin season. And so we are making some pumpkins. Like I said, we're going to be playing around with how we cut our piping bags. We're also going to be playing around with our consistency. We're going to do our typical hybrid 15-20 second consistency, but also something a little thicker so that we can get a better piping for these leaves where they're all separated and they're not blending together, as well as the stem for our pumpkin. So let's get into how to mix our consistencies, how to cut our piping bags, and get decorating. Be sure to download the guide in the description below so that you can get all the directions for all the colors, but I'm just going to show you how to do the two consistencies of the green icing. But you're going to want to do this for all the colors except for red, again, in the guide. So first, we're going to want to make our green color with blue and yellow, and we just want to have like a thick toothpaste-like icing consistency. And we're just going to fill a little bit of this into a piping bag. So I'm going to stop, put it into a piping bag, maybe about a spoonful or two. And then I'm going to come back, and this is where I want to make my 15 to 20 second icing. And so I'm just adding water here until it flows off of my spatula pretty nicely, and it flattens out in 15 to 20 seconds. Once all our icing is mixed and bagged, let's set up our workstation. I'm setting down some parchment paper, grabbing my cookies, a scribe. I also need my scissors, an edible marker if you're going to use it, and all of those piping bags. You are going to have 2 piping bags with your 2 different consistencies, and the thicker consistency, you are going to cut kind of a pointed arrow. So instead of cutting straight across the end of your piping bag, you're going to do a cut angled on one side and then a cut angled on the other side, like the tip of an arrow. And you want to cut the complete end of your piping bag off. You're not leaving a little bit of your piping bag closed at the end, but you'll see right here, I do one cut on one side, completely angled across, and then I flip my piping bag over and I want to do the same exact cut on the other side. And then I just test to make sure that I've cut all the way through. And this is going to put essentially a tip on our tipless piping bags. We are creating that piping tip that we would typically use that's metal, but we're not using that here. We're creating that tip by cutting it specifically. Now I will admit my yellow is not the thickest consistency. It kind of just blobs, but you can see with the green and the red that it's leaving a texture behind, and that's how we're going to get the leaf texture on our leaf pile cookies. So with the yellow, it really just blobs. It's unfortunate. I should have made it thicker consistency, but it's just blobbing, and I can tell I didn't cut it quite evenly enough. You still want to make sure it's a pretty small cut, because you can always cut more, you can never cut less, but I do want to make sure that the end is completely cut off and I'm left with kind of an arrow tip. And lastly, we have the orange to cut, and I'm going to come in angled across. I don't know my angles very well, otherwise I'd say like 45 degrees or something. But angled across, completely cutting the end of the tip off, flipping my piping bag over, and doing the same exact cut again. And then when I pipe it out, I get a little bit of this texture. Next, I'm going to cut the ends of my regular piping bags, and I'm just doing straight across. This is our normal straight across cut where I like to flatten out the end completely and then make a little cut, and then I test it to make sure that it's thick enough, and I will repeat that with all of my other piping bags. We're going to start with the leaf pile cookie, and you're going to grab just your thicker piping bags that have your little arrow point cut on the end. And you're just going to start with whatever color you want. Obviously, I've got yellow here, and again, my yellow is very blobby. It really needed to be thicker. Hopefully yours is better. And what you're gonna do is just squeeze out a little bit. You'll play around with it. Let's just say that. You're gonna squeeze out a little bit for your first layer of colors. We're gonna do 2 layers in total. So I just kind of did yellow sporadically across, and then I'm coming in with my next color, orange. And I'm squiggling my hand a little bit to get that leaf shape. And again, this is my first time using a cut tip this way. This is my first time piping leaves, and it's not always going to look great, but neither do leaf piles, so it's okay. After I feel like I have about the same leaves in my second color, orange, as I did my first color, yellow, I'm going to come in with red and fill in some more spots. Now, I'm not trying to cover the entire cookie with this first layer of icing. Leaf piles have piles of leaves, so we're gonna need to layer leaves on top of these with our icing. And in order to do that, we need our icing to harden a little bit. So after we finish this first layer, I'm putting down red, and then I'm gonna follow it with green. We're going to set these cookies aside and move on to one of our other cookies, because all 3 cookies in this set are going to do better if you decorate them in stages. And then the great thing about that is they all come together at the end. So I finished up with my red. I'm coming in with my green. Now, I don't want to use too much green. Not a lot of leaves in the leaf pile are green, right? So I'm just filling in a little bit, and I'm really working to not overlap any of my icing here, because I want this layer to dry so that all of these different spots feel very individual from each other. They don't end up looking like just a blob all mixed together on this cookie. And I'm just filling in any of these kind of empty spots that feel like they need a leaf in it, really trying to balance out the cookie. The great thing is, if you feel like you put too much of one color, we're gonna come back in a second. So now it's dried a little bit, we're doing our next layer. You're gonna come back and you can just cover that color up. Now, I'm not trying to cover any of these colors, I'm just filling in extra spaces. And again, I'm going one color at a time. You don't have to do that. You can switch up your colors as you're piping. That's totally fine. And I'm just filling in any of those empty spaces that I didn't have icing before. And especially with this yellow, since I know it's very blobby, I'm really glad I started with it, because I can add the texture of the other colors on top of this. So I'm just doing spots, and next I'm going to grab orange, come in here, and apparently my orange got a little crusty in the wait time. Oh, I came in with red instead. So I'm going to do red and drop some colors wherever it feels applicable. I know I have a couple of sections that maybe feel a little too green or a little too yellow that I'm going to drop some red on top just to mix it up color-wise. And you just keep up with this pattern of filling in holes, of balancing out the colors of your cookie until you are happy with it. Now, you don't have to stop at 2 layers. You could do 3 layers, you could do 4 layers. It completely depends on how thick your leaves are, and it completely depends on how thick you want your icing to be. I've made a pie cookie in the past where the icing was thicker than the cookie. I can't say that it was enjoyable, to me at least, but it did get consumed, so someone enjoyed it out there, and maybe that someone is you. So now I'm filling in with the green. I like doing green as the last color to decorate in here, because anywhere that feels like it's blending together too much, because the yellow and the orange and the red are all in a very similar color range. The green can separate that and really bring some pops of color in a different way and create some visual interest for the eye as well. And I'm also just filling in any extra teeny holes that are left over. And there you have the leaf pile cookie. In between the layers of leaf piles and the pumpkin layers that we're going to get to in a minute, you're going to work on the candle cookie. So I'm starting with my edible marker and I'm just doing an oval to make that 3D candle shape as if we're looking at the candle from an angle. And then I'm going to come in with the thick green, not the thin 20 to 15 second icing, but the thicker toothpaste-like consistency and a little bit of a spatula. And I'm just going to scrape that out. So what I'm trying to do with this section of the cookie is to make it look like the frosted glass back that you would see if you looked at a candle from, you know, a little bit of an angle. If you're sitting on the couch and you see the candle on the coffee table, this is the back, but the inside of your candle. Now, I do think that you could completely leave this section out and it might actually look more like a candle, but regardless, this is the step I took. You try it the other way, tag me in your pictures, let me know how it turns out. You're gonna grab the orange or the red, whatever base you wanna use, and this is gonna be your candle color. So I'm doing the orange and I'm just tracing that oval that I drew on the cookie. You can also scratch it out with your scribe. And then I'm gonna fill that oval in. And once that oval is filled in, I'm gonna come in with my scribe, make sure that it's leveled out, and then we're gonna set this cookie aside. So I obviously needed to add a little bit more into this so we could level it out, make it a solid candle base. But we want this to crust over a little bit. That's what we call it in the cookie world, where your icing has hardened, and if you came in with a scribe, it would dry oddly. We're not at that point right here, but that's why we want to let this dry and crust over so we can come back later and add a flame and add the front of our candle, the little glass cup that the candle's going to sit in. So after that is all evened out, I'm just gonna wipe my scribe off and we're gonna come back to this cookie. You can see it's dried a little bit, it's a little bit more matte. And now I'm gonna add in the front of the candle. What is it, votive? Is that the name? And I'm making a full circle around the entire cookie with that green outline. So I want this to look like this is all one piece. Was that the right move? You tell me. This was a very creative candle. You tell me if you even see the vision. I'm very interested. Once I do that, I again want to outline that oval piece, just the very bottom of it, so that I'm creating the base for where I'm going to fill in with the green. This is going to be the 15 to 20 second green icing, not the toothpaste-like consistency. And I'm just kind of going over these sections and creating a very solid line, especially that line on top of the cookie where we already did a little bit of that green, because it's creating the shape for us, or at least that's what I was going for. So I'm coming in with the scribe and I'm just making sure that everything's leveling out and even, and making sure that it looks how I want it to look on top, and then I'm just going to even out that 15 to 20 second icing down below, making sure it's getting into the little bit of the sides of the outline of that candle, and then making sure that it's filling in the bottom of that circle as well. Next, you're going to grab your yellow icing so you can make that flame. For some reason, the flame made more sense to me if I piped it on upside down. You're going to want to do a raindrop shape with a little bit of a bend to it. And so you can see that right here. It's as if a raindrop is falling, or a flame shape. I wanted to give this a little bit more dimension, so I came in with the red. We only have one consistency of red, and that was fine. So I just piped a little dot of that in, and I'm going to use my scribe to bend it in the flame like a flame would look. And I'm just using my scribe to maybe make that shape a little bit better. Maybe I didn't like the piping the piped shape that I made with that flame, and I just wanted a little bit more something to it, right? I want it to stand out a little bit more. I think I probably could have made it bigger, but in the end, this is the funky abstract candle. Next, we're going to do the pumpkin, and again, we're going to want to do layers, but we're going to start off by using our scribe or our edible pen and creating the kind of curves that you see in a pumpkin. So I'm starting off with a very long oval in the middle, and then I'm going to do two kind of curved ovals. Honestly, they kind of look like pickles next to it. And I'm not making them curve. I'm not making them use the exact line of the round cookie. They are curving to go with the round cookie, but they can have a little bit of that ridge shape on the bottom that they have on the top. And be sure to leave some space on the top for the stem of your pumpkin as well. This is definitely visual. Please look at the pictures in the guide. Please follow along with this tutorial. It'll make more sense. Now I'm going to start by piping the outline of that middle oval, and I'm going to do the outline shape, and then I'm going to fill it in. And I am once again using the 15 to 20 second consistency, not the toothpaste-like consistency that we used for the leaves. I'm going to do the middle one, and then I'm going to do both of the outside ones, leaving a space in between all of these sections. And we're doing it in these sections so that when we let it dry, when we let this area crust over, that it creates some dimension in our cookie like you would see with a pumpkin, like those ridges you see in a pumpkin. So I outline the sections following either the areas that I scraped out with my scribe or that I drew on with my edible pen. And then I fill them in with that 15 to 20 second consistency. And I'm doing this again on the other side, just making the whole outline. It doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. Again, we are going to come back and fill in those other two sections. So if you are having trouble piping inside the lines, that is okay. If your lines aren't looking as beautiful as you want them to, that is also okay. Frankly, this is a cookie, so even if it doesn't look exactly like you want it to, it'll still taste good. And that's all that matters. Now come in with your scribe and make sure that you spread out that icing so it meets the edges of your outline. And then once you're done with that, you're going to want to make sure you set this cookie aside and let it dry while you do one of the steps for the candle or one of the steps for the leaf pile that we have going. And I'm just making sure I didn't go through with the scribe on any of the other sections. So before I set this cookie aside, just hitting it with the scribe. This helps you not have any what's called cratering in your cookie, where some areas have more icing and some have less icing. And now we're going to come back now that it has crusted over a little bit, and we're going to do those last two sections. So we're starting off with outlining. You may think, why do I need to outline it? I already have this area surrounded on two sides. The outline helps create a more defined line for this area. If you didn't have the outline, the little ridges sections that we're going to fill in the second time around would actually look really ragged on the edges. It's strange. It doesn't seem to make logical sense, but when you do it, and I try it out for yourself. Try not outlining these sections and see what happens. And you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. The edge gets a little wiggly. It's not as defined. It's not as straight. It doesn't give you that definition that you're originally looking for. You can also see here the difference between the dried icing and the fresh, still liquid icing. It dries a little bit darker than how it is piped onto the cookie. So it's definitely something to keep in mind when you are decorating, that the colors develop a little bit more. Now, once you have piped these areas, be sure to come back through with your scribe so you can spread out the icing, make sure it's fully covered. And then lastly, we're going to grab our green. And this is our toothpaste-like consistency green that we have cut, and we're just going to add our stem. I had a lot of fun decorating this set, and I hope you did too. My absolute favorite cookie in this set is this leaf pile. When I was coming with the designs for this set, I had a friend say, you should do a leaf pile. And my thought was, how do I do that? It was a really fun challenge. It was a new way to use the piping bag. I haven't done that cup before, but I think it came out really well. One of my consistencies, you can see it in the video, and you can kind of see it on the end cookie. My yellow wasn't quite thick enough, but that didn't ruin the cookie because leaf piles are kind of a conglomeration of a lot of leaves, and so having the different textures, the different looks totally works. I also really liked the pumpkins. They were a lot easier to decorate than I thought, especially if you outline with an edible marker or with your scribe, so you can get those lines right. They are very forgiving and super cute and easy. And then the biggest part about being a beginner when it comes to cookie decorating is playing around with styles, and things you might think will work, maybe won't work, and things that you might think won't work, maybe will be awesome. That's how I felt about this leaf pile, and the candle I was iffy about. But you know what? Sometimes the abstract things are fun, and the best part of this is you tried something new. So if you enjoyed this video, please give me a like or comment, and if you made this cookie set, please tag me at Iced.Kitchen on Instagram or Facebook or TikTok. You can pretty much find me all across the web. My name is Cami Bird. I'm the creator of Iced.Kitchen, and I hope to see you next time for our beginner cookie decorating sets.